Imagine waking up in the middle of the ocean, but not on the surface, 100 feet below, inside a ship that is flipped upside down. The lights are gone. The water is freezing. Around you float the lifeless bodies of your friends. There's no food, no drinking water, no way out. And every breath you take slowly eats away at the tiny pocket of oxygen keeping you alive. Most people wouldn't last an hour, but one man did the impossible. He survived 60 hours trapped at the bottom of the sea. This is the unbelievable true story of Harrison Okene, the man who lived inside a sunken ship for nearly 3 days. Harrison Okene wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't a soldier or an explorer. He was just an ordinary man living in Nigeria, working hard to provide for his family. Born in 1976, Harrison grew up in a small community along the coast. Life wasn't always easy, but he learned the value of faith, resilience, and hard work from an early age. By his mid-30s, he had built a life he was proud of. Harrison worked as a ship's cook, preparing meals for crews out at sea. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it gave him the chance to support the people he loved most. At home, Harrison was known as a warm, humble man with a big smile. He had recently married, and his wife was the light of his life. The two shared dreams of raising children, building a home together, and creating the kind of future they had always wanted. Family was everything to Harrison. And while his job meant long stretches away from home, he always carried pictures of his wife, and the thought of returning to her kept him going. But in May 2013, on what seemed like just another routine trip to sea, everything changed. Harrison would soon face a nightmare that no one could imagine, and a test of human survival that the world would never forget. It was May 26, 2013. The day started like any other. Harrison prepared breakfast for the crew of 11 men, not knowing that in just a few hours he'd be the only one left alive. The Jascon 4 tugboat, a massive vessel supporting oil operations off the coast of Nigeria, set out into the Atlantic. The sea was rough, but for seasoned crewmen, it was nothing unusual. Just before 5 a.m., disaster struck. A rogue wave slammed into the side of the tugboat with the force of a wrecking ball. Within seconds, the ship lurched violently and began to capsize. Harrison was thrown against the walls of the galley as pots, pans, and food crashed around him. The crew scrambled for safety, but water rushed in like a tidal wave. Wani and main. In the chaos, Harrison was pulled downward, dragged deeper as the tugboat flipped and sank, completely swallowed by the ocean in just a few minutes. 11 men went down with the ship that morning. Trapped in the freezing black waters, most never stood a chance. But by a twist of fate, Harrison was thrown into a small pocket of air inside the overturned vessel. The tugboat had sunk nearly 100 feet to the ocean floor, and Harrison found himself in total darkness, completely alone, with nothing but a tiny bubble of oxygen keeping him alive. If you are still there, please hit the subscribe button. Harrison's world was now a coffin of steel and silence. The tugboat rested on the sea floor, 100 feet beneath the waves. Around him, the ship groaned under pressure, each creak a reminder that the ocean wanted to crush everything inside. The air pocket he stumbled into was no bigger than a closet, about 4 feet high. The walls were slick with oil and seawater. It was pitch black. Every breath was laced with the metallic taste of fuel. At first, Harrison panicked. He screamed, pounded on the steel walls, but only silence answered. He was trapped in a tomb. Slowly, reality sank in. If he wasted energy, he'd burn through the little oxygen he had. He had to stay calm. To survive, he scavenged in the dark. Feeling his way through the water, he found a bottle of Coca-Cola, then a small piece of wood floating nearby. No food, no fresh water, just him, his faith, and that tiny pocket of air. Hours passed, then a day. Time blurred into endless darkness. The cold gnawed at his body. His teeth chattered uncontrollably, and salt water stung the open sores on his skin. Harrison had nothing to eat. His stomach twisted in hunger, but there was no food. No hope of it. Each time his body begged for strength, all he could do was sip stale, oily water from his hands and pray. To keep from drowning as the water level rose and fell with the shifting wreck, Harrison built a crude platform out of a mattress and debris, floating just enough to keep his head above water. But the hardest battle wasn't against the cold, it was against fear. Each sound, the distant thud of shifting metal, the crack of pressure, made him believe the ocean would collapse the ship at any second. In the darkness, his thoughts drifted to his family. He pictured his wife's smile, the laughter of his sweet little family waiting at home. The thought of never holding them again cut deeper than the hunger, deeper than the cold. Harrison prayed, over and over. He begged God not to let him die forgotten, not to let his mother think he vanished without a trace. He whispered their names into the silence as if his words could travel through steel and seawater back to the world above. Don't forget me, he prayed. Please, don't let me vanish down here. And then came the hallucinations. He swore he heard voices, laughter, even footsteps in the corridors. Once, he thought he saw a light shimmering through the water. Rescue. But when he reached out, there was nothing, just blackness. By the second night, his body was failing, his fingers wrinkled and raw, his throat burned with thirst. His chest felt heavier with each breath as carbon dioxide built up in the shrinking bubble of air. Still, Harrison refused to give in. He whispered to himself in the dark, I will not die here. I will not die today. And against all odds, help was on the way. For nearly 3 days, Harrison clung to life inside his steel coffin. His body was broken by exhaustion, his hope fading with every breath of stale air. And then, something. A sound. At first, he thought it was another hallucination. A faint tapping, the muffled thrum of an engine, then voices. Real voices. Divers. The Nigerian rescue team had arrived to recover bodies from the wreck. They weren't looking for survivors. No one believed anyone could still be alive after so long. They moved through the sunken ship with flashlights, expecting only silence and death. But as one diver swam past the narrow air pocket, Harrison did the unthinkable. He reached out through the water and grabbed the diver's hand. The man nearly bolted in terror. Imagine reaching into a shipwreck and feeling a hand grab you back. But then Harrison pulled again, desperate, and the diver realized the impossible. Someone was alive. When they shined the light on him, Harrison's eyes were wide, bloodshot from salt water and darkness. His lips cracked, his body trembling, but he was breathing, alive. It was a miracle. The rescue wasn't simple. The divers couldn't just pull him straight up. He'd been breathing pressurized air at the bottom of the ocean for days. If they rushed him up, his blood would boil from decompression sickness. The bends. So they fitted him with scuba gear, kept him calm, and slowly guided him back through the black corridors of the wreck up toward the surface. When Harrison finally broke through the water, His chest heaved, his eyes blinked against the sunlight he thought he'd never see again. Tears rolled down his face as he gasped, "Thank you, thank you." For 60 hours he had lived in darkness, surrounded by death. But now, against all odds, Harrison Okene was alive. When Harrison reached the surface, his ordeal wasn't over. His body was weak, starved, and freezing. Rescue workers rushed him into a decompression chamber, the same kind used for deep-sea divers, to slowly bring his body back to normal pressure. Inside, he lay trembling on the bed, hooked to oxygen, his skin raw and his eyes hollow. Doctors worked frantically to stabilize him, but even then, no one could believe what they were seeing. A man who had lived 3 days, 100 feet beneath the sea, with nothing but faith and an air pocket. Hours turned into days of treatment. Harrison drifted in and out of sleep, replaying the nightmare in his mind. The screams of his crewmates, the crushing silence, the hallucinations. Each time he woke, he half expected to still be in the dark belly of the ship. And then came the moment that made all the suffering worth it. His family arrived. When his wife stepped into the hospital room, Harrison broke down. He tried to sit up, but his body was too weak. Tears streamed as she ran to his side, clutching his hand, whispering his name over and over, "Harrison, Harrison." His mother followed, crying so hard she could barely see. For 3 days, she had thought her son was gone, swallowed by the sea like so many before him. Now here he was, scarred, fragile, but alive. She fell to her knees, thanking God through sobs of relief. Harrison could only whisper back, his voice hoarse, I prayed I would see you again." The room filled with tears, laughter, and the unshakable realization that they had been given a miracle. Harrison Okene had survived the impossible. Harrison Okene's survival wasn't just a story about luck. It was about faith, endurance, and the sheer will to live when every second screamed that death was certain. He spent nearly 60 hours in total darkness, in freezing water without food, without hope of rescue. Yet, he refused to give in. When doctors studied his case, they admitted the truth. By every law of science, he should have died within hours. And yet, he lived. A living miracle at the bottom of the ocean. Today, Harrison lives a quiet life with his family in Nigeria. The sea still frightens him, and he has never returned to diving. But he no longer needs to, because his story has already gone deeper than the ocean ever could. Moral of the story: Harrison's survival teaches us something powerful. No matter how dark your world becomes, there is always a light waiting. No matter how small your chance of survival seems, never let go of hope. Even when trapped in a coffin of steel and silence, faith and determination can keep your spirit alive. The ocean tried to take Harrison, but his willpower brought him back. And if he could survive the depths of the sea, maybe, just maybe, we can all survive the storms in our own lives.
Thank you for watching. If this video didn't waste your valuable time or added any value to your life, even just a little, please consider subscribing to Hello Stories. Until next time, goodbye, warriors.